Tragically, David Miranda, the trailblazing Brazilian socialist politician, obviously husband of Glenn Greenwald, passed away on the eve of his 38th birthday on Tuesday morning following a 9-month stint in the ICU for an abdominal infection. Glenn himself published just a really moving Twitter thread as a tribute to him the morning that he passed. So we're going to read through this here. It is with the most profound sadness that I announce the passing away of my husband, David Miranda. He would have turned 38 tomorrow. His death early this morning came after a 9-month battle in the ICU. He died in full peace, surrounded by our children and family and friends. There he is. There's him with the family. One of the things that Robert mentioned is that David really convinced Glenn to adopt children, which is something that Glenn was always hesitant to do. But Glenn talks about how, he really taught him to be a great dad. They adopted mixed race kids who were from an orphanage themselves, so who had a difficult upbringing, and obviously gave them a wonderful life. Glenn goes on to say David's life was extraordinary in all ways. His mother died when he was 5, leaving him an orphan in Yacarazine. I think that's how you pronounce that. But a beautiful and compassionate neighbor, Donna Elian, took him in despite 4 children of her own and deep poverty, became his mom, and gave him a chance for life. That gave David the chance to live his full potential in a society that often suffocates it. He was key to the Snowden story, became the first gay man elected to Rio's city council, then federal Congress at age 32. He inspired so many with his biography, his passion, and force for life. Here he is with Edward Snowden here. Here he is in a clash with police. Because of how David grew up, there were always many assumptions made by those who didn't know him. Anyone who did will tell you there was nobody with a stronger will or life force. He was proud that he was named by Time, our next generation's leaders. But by far, David's biggest dream, what gave him the greatest pride and purpose, was being a father. He was the most dedicated and loving parent. He taught me how to be a father. And our truly exceptional boys, with their own difficult start to life, is his greatest legacy. This is just really a heartbreaker. I mean, it's just a gutting story with these 2 kids who they adopted at a young age. They had an animal sanctuary, a dog sanctuary, where they actually had homeless people care for dogs at their sanctuary to give homeless people some work experience so that they can go get jobs in the field themselves. Edward Snowden, Greenwald mentioned that Snowden was very, very grateful to David, and Snowden actually put out a tweet himself here. Heartbreaking news of everyone who had a hand in the 2013 revelations of global mass surveillance. My dear friend David Miranda was perhaps the most righteous and pure. I will never forget that when the UK broke its own laws to detain David as a terrorist for daring to aid an act of journalism and threatened to throw him in a dungeon for the rest of his life, he never faltered. Instead, he dared them to do it. It was that courage that set him free, that courage that moved the story forward, that will forever serve as the example of a man at his best. I will miss you, David. Stay free. So what he is referring to, of course, is in 2013, after Glenn Greenwald published the Snowden leaks, Miranda worked with a global human rights group to gather signatures for Brazil to grant asylum to Edward Snowden, saying, quote, this is the quote that David gave about Edward Snowden, he deserves thanks for what he's done, not a life in prison. Now, after that effort failed, Miranda was held and questioned at a London airport for 9 hours while having Snowden-related materials on his person. He was on a flight from Berlin back to Rio with, I guess, a transfer in London, and he was held there for 9 hours, questioned, had his materials taken from him, and was threatened with detention at Guantanamo Bay. When he arrived back in Rio after that episode, Glenn was waiting for him, and here is video of that in 2013 explaining to reporters what happened.
Fiquei numa sala, tiveram 6 agentes diferentes que eles estavam entrando e saindo, falando comigo, me fizeram perguntas sobre minha vida inteira, sobre tudo, levaram meu computador, videogame, celular, meus memory cards que estavam tudo.
Eu vou fazer a reportagem com muito mais agressão do que antes. Eu vou publicar muito mais documentos do que antes. Eu vou publicar muitas coisas sobre a Inglaterra também. Eu tenho muitos documentos sobre o sistema de espionagem da Inglaterra. Agora meu foco vou ficar lá também. E acho que eles vão arrepender que eles fizeram.
Now, in 2016, an English court ruled based on this case that a key provision of its Terrorism Act of 2000 was incompatible with human rights. This was the stop power provision. The court said that the stop power, if used in respect of journalistic information or material, is incompatible with Article 10, which is freedom of expression of the European Convention on Human Rights. So off of the heels of that, Miranda then began a political career in Brazil, first being elected to Rio's city council in 2016, the first openly gay man to serve in that role. Now, in 2019, an openly gay member of the Brazilian Congress fled the country due to repeated death threats. And after he fled, the Socialism and Liberty Party appointed Miranda as his replacement. Miranda stepped up, knowing, like I said, that the previous gay member of Congress had had his life threatened to the point where he fled the country. Jair Bolsonaro, of course, gloated at the resignation of this former politician, Jean Willis. He tweeted out on that day that he resigned. Grande dia, grand day, happy day.
Great day, yeah.
Great day. And then David tweeted back at him, respect Jean Jair and hold your excitement. One LGBT comes out, but another comes in. And that one comes from Yakrazine, another one who approved more projects in 2 years than you did in 28. See you in Brasilia. So obviously David's life was one of immense courage. David and Glenn are obviously two extraordinarily brave people who obviously found a lot of courage and strength in each other and built a beautiful life together, gave a beautiful life to these kids. And so this is just a terrible, terrible loss. It's really tragic. And I remember when he was hospitalized in August, Glenn Greenwald, he tweeted out that, he wasn't expected to make it through the week. And he fought for 9 months. And when you look at all that Glenn has done in these past 9 months with all the writing and the launching of the Rumble show and all of this, with all this turmoil going on, the backbone of these guys is just incredible. I mean, these are two really brave and tough as nails people who, like I said, obviously found something in each other that gave them a lot of strength to move on. These guys fought some very, very important battles against some very powerful people who really hated their guts. Everything I just talked about was before Greenwald exposed the Bolsonaro government and then had the Bolsonaro government come after them. I mean, these guys are true dissident voices. And, to have him mount those kinds of struggles, a guy of such bravery, such strength, and such courage, to have him taken down by an infection, it's just like, oh man, like I just, I'm not a religious person, and this is one of the things that baffles me about religion, but it's also one of the things that I kind of admire about religious people. It's like to even try and make moral sense of a world that can take a guy like David Miranda at 37, after all he's been through, can take him away from us with a bug that gets in his gut and spreads into his bloodstream. Where's the justice in that? Where's the meaning in that? It's just a gutting thing. But obviously, all love and well wishes to the family.
Well, and when you look at that story and you look at Glenn's story and you look at what they've both done, it really speaks to the corruption of our age, that they're not only not heroes in this country, but particularly Glenn is vilified in this country. You know, you had idiots who have so little understanding of the situation and are so brainwashed by their media that they actually made the statement that Glenn Greenwald must be disappointed when Lula, who he got freed from prison, was elected.
Right, was elected president again. Yeah.
You know, it's really a case of a prophet hath no honor in his own country. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's hard to make sense of a moral universe, right? Or to conceive of a moral universe where a guy like this who would overcome so much, that would happen to him. Only the good die young, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this would
I
just,
saw a lot of people tweet that exact thing. Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's just it's a horrible tragedy, and the fact that Glenn has not missed a beat through all of this is amazing. I hope he takes a step back for a while and takes some time for himself now.
Yeah, I mean, he has had to step back a little bit in terms of like the weekly Rumble schedules to deal with this stuff, as is obviously more than understandable. But I mean, despite those setbacks, look at the output during this time. I mean, it's just incredibly traumatic and difficult time, especially with two kids. You know, so it's just it's a horrible thing, but David's life was, you know, truly a dissident life, truly a life well lived, albeit far, far, far too short. And so we wish Mr. Greenwald and the family, obviously, all the best.
The real dissidents.
The real dissidents, indeed.